Okay, so what I want to talk about this week, I'm going to talk about the Arbah Parshiyos, the 4 special Torah readings, which we're going to start beginning next week. Throughout the period surrounding Purim and Pesach, we have 4 special readings in addition to, of course, the weekly Torah portion. And I just want to talk a little bit about them, what that's about, and some of the concepts behind it. So the first of the 4 Parshiyot is Parshas Shkalim. Parshas Shkalim is read either if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbos, you read it on Shabbos. Otherwise, it's read on Shabbos Mevarchim of Chodesh Adar, like it will be read this year. Rosh Chodesh Adar is going to be next, not this coming Sunday, next Sunday. So on Shabbos, which the 29th of Shvat, we're going to read Parshas Shkalim. Parshas Shkalim you can find on page 484 in the Chumash, and it tells us about the proper procedure for taking a census of the Jewish people. It says, when you will take a census of the children of Israel according to their numbers, every man shall give Hashem an atonement for his soul when counting them, so there will not be a plague among them when counting them. This shall they give everyone who passes through the census a half shekel of the sacred shekel. This is the amount of the coin that needs to be given, half a shekel, and this money would be used for various purposes in the temple. The Talmud derives not only when there needs to be a census taken of the Jewish people, do you need to donate this half a shekel, but every year, in order to replenish the temple treasury, there needs to be half a shekel given. From this donation, the temple will purchase all of the communal sacrifices, the tamid, the daily sacrifice, the musaf, the additional sacrifices that are brought on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh and on the holidays. And then the leftovers from this money will be used for various other purposes that are funded by the temple treasury. And everyone has to give this donation. The time period for this donation is going to be that the beginning of the month of Nisan has all of the funds given from the new year's collection. So therefore on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, first day of the month of Nisan, there's going to now be a donation, sacrifices that are given, that are brought from the new collection. How do you arrange this? So throughout the month of Adar, the last month of the year before the month of Nisan, people will be collecting money. There's a whole procedure that's set out. We begin by reading Parshas Shkalim to inform people that they need to start giving this donation. Again, throughout the month of Adar, there would be various collection facilities that were made available to the people throughout the month in order to make sure that the money got given from all the Jewish people needed to give this donation, be collected, sent to the temple, and then they could begin buying the new sacrifices on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that's the first parsha. This donation of the half a shekel. It says in the Midrash, it says that Hashem told Moshe, when the Jewish people will read this portion of Kitisa, when we read the portion of Shkalim, it will be considered as if you're standing before them and counting them and bringing these Shkalim and serving as an atonement for the Jewish people. So this is the Parsha of Shkalim, and we read corresponding to this year's Torah reading, which also describes the collection of funds for temple repairs in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash. It's another connection between Shkalim and Purim, which is that the Gemara tells us that Haman came to Achashverosh to try and convince him to go against the Jewish people. We read in the Megillah, Haman offers Achashverosh a large sum of money to replace the lost revenues that he's going to lose out by eliminating the Jewish people. The Gemara actually tells us the Jews at this point in time were pretty much the only people paying taxes to Achashverosh. Achashverosh had given various tax deductions throughout the whole empire in relation to Esther's ascension to the throne. And Medrash tells us basically nobody knew what country Esther came from, so Achashverosh gave everyone a tax exemption except for the Jews. He was pretty sure she wasn't a Jew. How that turned out. But the Jews were pretty much financing the entire Persian Empire at this time. It was going to be a big loss of money. And the Gemara says, do you think that Haman thought he could persuade Achashverosh by making this large donation? And Hashem says the donation that the Jews made in the desert to the half shekels, which they gave to the temple funds, would outweigh all of the donations that Haman tried to give to persuade Achashverosh to go against the Jewish people. It's another reason why Shkalim needs to be read before Purim. It actually comes based on this an interesting halachic discussion. Is what happens if you, for some reason, the shul does not end up reading Parshas Shkalim on the week that is designated for Parshas Shkalim. Usually, and we have it in this year, in almost all years, there is going to be a week separating Parshas Shkalim from the next of the 4 Parshiyos, which is Parshas Zachor. So this year, for instance, Parshas Shkalim is supposed to be read on Shabbos Parshas Mishpatim. Then you're going to have the next week, Shabbos Parshas Truma, there's no reading. So there's a discussion, what would happen if a shul forgot, for whatever reason there was no reading of the Torah on Parshas Mishpatim, or they forgot that it was supposed to be Shkalim. Can you do the reading the next week? Because we're still before Purim, we're still operating in this this idea of the month of Adar is the time of collecting the Shkalim, the period of time before Purim, that the Shkalim that were given to the temple, the coins given to the temple, should outweigh the coins given by Haman. The consensus seems to be not to read Parshas Shkalim with a bracha, at least not to do that. It's not the week that was established for it. But there is some discussion about this topic.
Some years you don't even have a week in between.
Some years you don't have a week, so then maybe you would end up having to read it twice. And the year when Shabbos falls on Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, so then the next week already you're going to have to be reading Parshas Zachor. So Parshas Zachor is the second of the 2 Parshas. Parshas Zachor can be found at the end of Parshas Kiteitzei. It's on page 1066 in the Art Scroll Chumash. And Parshas Zachor means to remember. Is the first word in the parsha, the Devarim chapter 25 verse 17. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you were leaving Egypt. And this refers to the war that the Jews fought with Amalek. We actually read about it at the end of last week's parsha. The Jews are traveling through the desert. They have complained about a lack of water. They have shown a lack of faith in Hashem. They should have been expressing. They should have known Hashem was going to certainly provide for them, as He had provided everything for them. And they didn't. They questioned. The Midrash provides a parable. The father is walking with his son. He's providing everything for the son, and then all of a sudden the son says, anyone seen my father? So the father throws his son off his shoulders, says, you don't know that I'm the one providing everything for you. And only after this does the son begin to realize everything that his father is really doing for him. And this is the war with Amalek. The Amalekites are cousins to the Jewish people. They're descendants of Esav, and they are very, their basis, everything about them, they're opposed to holiness, they're opposed to the Jewish people, they want to destroy the Jewish people. And the Torah describes that their motivation is V'lo yarei Elokim. They have no fear of Hashem. They know Hashem wants the Jewish people to go out of Egypt, to receive the Torah, to come into the land of Israel. They don't care. They are going to do things their way, which is in opposition to Hashem. And Hashem requires us to remember this war that the Amalekim fought, and to remember that there is a commandment that the Jewish people should ultimately wipe out the memory of Amalek. When the Jewish people will establish a monarchy in the land of Israel, one of the commandments upon that king will be to wipe out the people of Amalek. And that's what the Torah reading for Parshas Zachor is about. The King Shaul, the first Jewish king, is commanded to wipe out Amalek. He is almost successful. He kills almost all of them. But he leaves the king alive. The king, whose name is Agag, ultimately fathers a child who is the ancestor of Haman, we read about during the story of Purim. And this reading of Parshas Zachor, according to many authorities, is actually a biblical mitzvah. unlike the other readings of the Parshiyos, indeed unlike the reading of the Torah that we do every week, which is a rabbinical commandment, the reading of Parshas Zachor, according to many authorities, is a biblical commandment, and therefore we really try to make sure that it can be done, to make sure there's a minyan, to make sure that people come and listen to it. There is discussion about whether or not women are obligated to hear the reading of Parshas Zachor. There, in general, and especially in recent years, it's become very popular and customary that women do try to hear this reading in shul. There are authorities who say they really don't have to. They could read it themselves. They could no need to attend.
Don't they say that they are part of the decree, the part of the Gezerah?
So that's by the Megillah. With Parshas Zachor, there seems to be two discussions. One is a question, the Minchas Chinuch talks about this, whether or not, what exactly is the concept of Parshas Zachor? One theory, one way you can look at Parshas Zachor is to remember this action so that eventually when we will have the resumption of the monarchy with Mashiach, we will be able to carry out this mitzvah and wipe out wage a war against the tribe of Amalek and wipe them out. Women are not generally part of the military. They may provide a support role, but they're not generally involved in combat situations, although the Pentagon has now changed that, apparently. But in Jewish law, in the Torah law, the soldiers, the army force is comprised of men, and therefore women might, this parsha might not really have relevance to them. They don't need to be constantly remembering this word. That's one argument, and then there are others who say, no, they do have a supportive role. They need to be part of this remembrance. The other issue has to do with whether or not, if we're talking about part of the mitzvah being to have a communal reading of the Torah, well, women are exempt in general from studying Torah and from being part of the communal Torah reading. So maybe they could just, they should remember it, but maybe they don't specifically have to go to shul and hear it read in the Torah. They could, read it themselves or somehow talk about the story with Amalek. So again, women try to go to shul. They try to hear it. Some shuls even do special readings of Parshas Zachor for women. And there's discussion on whether or not that's really necessary. Or certainly, if all the men have heard Parshas Zachor, it shouldn't be read again with the brachos.
Not prohibited, but
it's not prohibited, but so
or even discouraged.
Not necessarily discouraged, even, but certainly, if all the men have heard the reading already, all the men who are present, then you wouldn't repeat the blessings when you did that reading. Just read the verses. Just read Parshas Zachor. There's another interesting point with Parshas Zachor, that there's this word in it means zecher, the remembrance, the memory of Amalek, the zecher Amalek. And there's actually two customs how to pronounce this word. One custom pronounces the word zecher, and one custom pronounces the word zecher. And in many shuls, there's a custom to just repeat the word, repeat the whole verse, so you can, if this is a biblical commandment, make sure we got it read properly. Is zecher or zecher, either way. The Gemara actually tells us a story. Yoav, who was the general in the army of King David, he apparently had been taught by a teacher who was not a very exact in his pronunciation, and he thought that the word was zachar, the men of Amalek. So when Yoav waged a war, he only killed the men, and he didn't do anything. He left the women and children. Said, just supposed to be the men, the zachar Amalek. And David said, why did you kill the men, not the women? And he said, well, I that's what my teacher told me, zachar Amalek, the men of Amalek. And he said, okay, try that one again. Not the correct pronunciation. So we do try to make sure this is pronounced correct. What happens if someone missed Parshas Zachor? We're not able to be in shul at all for Shabbos Parshas Zachor. So, according to some authorities, the Magen Avraham mentions this: when you come to the shul on Purim daytime, the Purim Torah reading is actually the Torah reading from Parshas Beshalach, which we read on last Shabbos, that talks about the actual war with Amalek. And again, it's not these verses, but it is going to be a Torah reading that describes the war with Amalek, and you could fulfill your obligation by hearing this portion. There are it's not general, except you really should try to come for Parshas Zachor, but if you were not able to make it, this is an opinion that can be relied on. Sometimes in Israel, you actually end up having another reading, which is going to take place, again, Parshas Zachor is read the week before Purim, because on Purim we actually did fight against Amalek and did attack the enemies that we had from Amalek. And so we want to make the Zechira Kodem La'asiyah. The remembrance should take place before the commemoration of the actual destruction of Amalek, which happened on Purim. In Yerushalayim, Purim is observed on the 15th of Adar. The 15th of Adar can fall on Shabbos, which is not the 14th of Adar, which is the day we keep Purim, cannot fall on Shabbos. But it's in Yerushalayim, when the 15th of Adar falls on Shabbos, the Torah reading for that day is in the regular weekly parsha, followed by the Purim Torah reading, the Haftarah. Then it's actually repeated as 2 weeks in a row. You have the same Haftarah, also talking about the war with Amalek. The third parsha is Parshas Para. Parshas Para can be found at the beginning of Parshas Chukas. It can be found on page 838 in the Art Scroll, at the Midbar, chapter 19. And this is the law of the red heifer. This is the Torah introduces Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is the decree of the Torah. A chok is a type of mitzvah that has no rational explanation for it. There are so many details and elements of the concept of the red heifer, of the Parah Aduma, that our sages ultimately say nobody can really know them. It was revealed to Moshe and not to anyone else. The Medrash tells us that Shlomo HaMelech, who was King Solomon, the wisest of men, was trying to understand Parah Aduma. He said, I can understand anything, I can do this. And he was forced to admit that the pasuk says in Koheles, Amarti echkama v'hira choka mimeni. I said I would be wise, I would figure this out, but I couldn't figure out what the meaning of Parah Aduma is. And basically the idea of the Parah Aduma is one takes a red heifer, it has to be completely red, completely unblemished, without ever having done work. It's taken outside of the camp, it's slaughtered, and the blood is sprinkled in the ritual manner. The Parah Aduma is then burnt with various things are thrown into it. Cedar wood, hyssop, crimson thread is thrown into the burning of the parah. The ashes are collected, and the ashes are then combined with water in a specific ritual. Then the water can be sprinkled on someone who has become impure from contact with the dead body. That person becomes pure again. The person who actually did the sprinkling, the person who comes in contact with water, all the other people become impure. That's ultimately part of the chok, of the inexplicable reason behind this. And ultimately there is a reason. It says that it was revealed to Moshe, but it's not something that was revealed to us. And it's an example. The Midrash says that it's an example of Jewish faith that we carried out this ritual, and it says the Satan, the evil inclination, would try to convince people, why are you bothering to do this? You really don't have to do this. It doesn't make any sense. What difference does this make? And the nations would make fun of this. And the Jewish people, as an element of faith, said, if Hashem wants us to do it, we're going to do this, even if we can't understand. There is a connection between the Parah Aduma and the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf, which our sages found many of the laws are similar, many of the concepts of the Parah Aduma in some way is supposed to be an atonement for the sin of the golden calf. And the basis for this, and I did, the Midrash says, let the mother come and clean up the mess made by her son. The Jews worshipped a calf. This is a heifer, an adult female cow, and now we're going to let the mother come in and atone for this sin. And one of the ideas that's suggested is that ultimately part of the sin of the golden calf is based on the Jews trying to substitute their idea of what should be going on for what Hashem told them. Hashem told them Moshe is coming back. they said, well, he's getting kind of late. We really need a leader. The calf sounds like a great idea to lead us. And but you don't. The idea of the sin of the golden calf ultimately is the Jewish people trying to second guess what they had been told. They had been told Moshe's coming back. They need to believe Moshe's coming back. And the idea of the paraduma then being a idea that we don't understand what we're doing, but we're doing it anyway. We're doing it because Hashem told us to do it. That in some ways serves as an atonement for the sin of the golden calf. The paraduma ritual was done, our sages tell us, 9 times throughout history. It will be done a 10th time by Mashiach in Herav Yameinu. And one of the times during the year when it was very important to be cognizant of the laws of impurity and purity was in preparation for Pesach. All the Jews were expected to come to Yerushalayim for Pesach and to bring a carbon Pesach, and to do that one had to undergo a process of ritual impurity. The first time that the paraduma was offered, our sages tell us, was actually on the 2nd day of Nisan in preparation for the upcoming Pesach celebration. So therefore, paraduma, Parshas Parah, would be read annually before Pesach in order to get people ready for Pesach, make sure everyone had time to purify themselves, and the people who needed to be purified should go and undergo this ritual. There are some opinions that also say that the reading of Parshas Parah is a mitzvah d'oraisa, a biblical commandment, and one should really try to hear it. This one, there doesn't seem to be so much emphasis that's placed on reading it. Apparently more authorities who suggest that it's not necessarily of biblical origin. However, for instance, I don't. A lot of times, women really try to come for Parshas Zachor, but you don't really see this for Parshas Parah. But it is brought down in Shulchan Aruch, this opinion that Parshas Parah may be a biblical commandment. Really, people should try to make an effort. That's usually going to be the Shabbos after Purim, but not always. Sometimes there's a break. The rule for Parshas Parah is it's a week before Parshas HaChodesh. That's the rule that governs Parshas Parah. The Parshas Parah and Parshas HaChodesh should never be separated. Parshas HaChodesh, which is the 4th reading, is going to be read either on Shabbos Rosh Chodesh Nisan, if that falls on Shabbos like it did last year, or otherwise on Shabbos Mevarach, and the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Just briefly, the Haftarah for Parshas Parah also has a special Haftarah which talks about how the Jewish people will be purified in the future by Hashem in the manner that the paraduma purified the people in the past. And then Parshas HaChodesh, page 348, the book of Shemot, chapter 12, the beginning of chapter 12. Hashem said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month shall be for you the beginning of the months. It shall be for you the first of the months of the year." This is, of course, the month of Nisan, the month in which the Jewish people left Egypt. And this is, again, going to be similar to the idea of Kiddush HaChodesh, of the sanctification of the new month, which would be done by the Sanhedrin every month in Yerushalayim, or wherever they would have the meeting. They would receive testimony that the new moon had been seen. They would gather together. They would declare Mekudash, the month is sanctified. And we recall that by reading the Parshas HaChodesh, at least before the month of Nisan begins. This is the first of the months. And also the Parsha goes on to describe the laws of the Pesach. Again, getting ready for, the idea is getting ready for Pesach to review these halachot. It tells us about you have to get the lamb ready, you have to get the matzah and maror ready, get ready for, start cleaning for Pesach. People probably started cleaning for Pesach already by this time. This is only about 2 weeks before Pesach. But this is Parshas HaChodesh, and the Haftarah describes the idea of how in the future, the dedication of the third Beis HaMikdash, the special services that will be done on Rosh Chodesh Nisan and on the days following that to re-inaugurate the third Beis HaMikdash. We work backwards again from the date of Parshas HaChodesh in order to find the date for Parshas Parah. Usually it's the Shabbos. There's only one Shabbos in between Purim and then the time when Parshas HaChodesh is read. Sometimes there are two when Purim falls either on Thursday or Friday. in that year you're going to have that week will again be a break to make Para and HaChodesh, Para and HaChodesh always have to go together. The Gemara actually gives a hint for this. The Gemara says the hint for this you can find from the laws of the Arba Kosos, for the 4 cups that we drink at the Seder. So the way those the 4 cups work is you have the first cup, you make Kiddush on the second cup at the end of Magid, at the end of the reading of the Haggadah. Then you have the meal, the 3rd cup is for benching, and the 4th cup is for the reading of Hallel. And the halacha actually is between the 1st cup and the 2nd cup. If you want to drink more wine, you can do it. A lot of people find that 4 cups enough, but if you want more wine, you can have it between the 1st and the 2nd cup. In between the 2nd and 3rd cups, you can have more wine. Between the 3rd and the 4th cups, there's no more eating because you've already eaten the afikomen. At that point, you have to just do the 3rd and the 4th cup. So that's the hint between the 3rd and the 4th parsha, between Parshas Par and Parshas HaChodesh. There can be no more interruptions. That those go together. And on a more symbolic level, the first 2 cups at the Seder represent, the Gemara tells us, they represent things that happened in the past. They represent the exodus from Egypt that happened in the past. And the final 2 cups are more looking towards the future redemption. We say the Birchat Hamazon, we say the Hallel, which is more looking forward to the future redemption. And similar idea within these parshas, the idea of Shkalim and Zachor, like we talked about, is talking mostly about the salvation in the times of Purim, whereas the idea of Para and HaChodesh is looking towards the future redemption. And we will again be bringing the Korban Pesach in Yerushalayim, so that unit, those don't get separated between. That's the idea of redemption. We want to come quickly and without a separation between them. So this is the 4 cups, the 4 parshas that we have, that we read in the time of Purim and Pesach. Any questions? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
But you guys, nobody have another question before I ask?
Oh, well, let's go. I'll think of. Well,
When you see someone losing weight.
If it's set up as a 4 weeks, why we have sometimes hafsaka?
So this is what we talk about. We have 4 parshas. They're not actually ever going to be read over 4 weeks. They're going to be read either over a period of 5 or 6 weeks, and that's because of this idea. The parshas Shkalim, usually, almost always, there's going to be a break between Shkalim and Zachor. Shkalim is going to be read usually before the month of Adar starts. Even it's going to be read the Shabbos before the month of Adar, so that once there's a discussion about this in the Talmud, but once Rosh Chodesh Adar comes, the people need to start giving their Shkalim. So before if Rosh Chodesh Adar is on Shabbos, then before Rosh Chodesh Adar, people are going to have heard about the donation to the temple, the donation of the shekel, the half shekel, when it needs to be given to the temple. So that's going to cause a break. Zachor is tied into Purim. Zachor is going to be the week before Purim. And so usually there's going to be a week in between that. And like we said, also Para and HaChodesh, also those, there isn't never going to be a break in between those. But sometimes, depending on when Purim falls out, if Purim falls out on Thursday or Friday, there's going to actually be a break in between Purim and there'll be 2 Shabboses in between Purim and Shabbos Mevarchim of the month of Nisan, or the actual Rosh Chodesh Nisan falling on Shabbos. That year, you actually get the 3 parshas. They're going to be read together.
So can you clarify the difference, the shkalim and the money that we are giving on Purim?
So that's a very good question. So we do something which we call Machzis HaShekel. On Tanis Esther, in the afternoon, usually it's the afternoon before Purim, before the Megillah is read this year, because Purim is going to be on Sunday. We don't end up reading on. We can't fast on Shabbos, so the Tanis Esther, the fast before Purim, is pushed off to Thursday, the Thursday before Purim. So usually it will be that Thursday night. There will be the Thursday afternoon. It comes to Shul for the fast day reading. There will be a donation of Machzis HaShekel, 3 $50 coins. It's commemorative of these coins, and we'll talk a little more about it after Maariv. But it's not actually a donation to the temple. Someone shouldn't say, "This is my Machzis HaShekel." If you do that, you could have a problem with that. asked Rabbi, but this is in remembrance. Zecher l'machzas shekel, remembers the machzas shekel donations, and this is just the Jews were giving donations at this time. Some people would give this to the synagogue fund. Some people would give it actually to the poor. It's a remembrance of this practice.
Wanted
Take
to-
care of